Okay, so aside from the fact that our dictionaries are bigger, open-ended lexicon, we said that the basic difference between human real language and animal mere communication is the grammatical structure. Human languages have recursion, animal communicate call systems, the technical term, don't. Okay, so humans have one thing, animals don't have it. Okay, all we need to do now is define the thing. Define recursion. I'll try. Here is an example of a sentence. I am very hungry. Another sentence. I am very, 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 very hungry. How many varies am I allowed to put in? Well, it would get impractical after a while, but technically I can put as many varies in as I want. So recursion has to do with being able to stuff, like sentences, when you look at the grammar, usually they come out into trees, like a bunch of forks. The specific structure, we're not going to deal with that. That's Chomskyan syntax. You could spend your whole life on that. But you get these slots that things can go in. And in those slots, you can put a specific word, or you can put a whole group of words. Maybe even a whole clause. I am hungry. So I am something. I am very hungry. Very hungry is its own something. I am something again. Very, 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 very hungry. That is a cursory look at recursion. Actually, it could be recursion or iteration. So now we're going to go for another example to differentiate recursion from mere iteration. Probably sort of hard for some brains in the audience, but any programmers, computer scientists around? You guys might be the first ones to understand this. Because recursion is super important to human language, and we do it almost automatically. But having a programming language with recursion versus one without makes the difference between whether it's a cool language or if it's like talking to a monkey. And it'll do some things, but not a real lot. So the computer programmers in the crowd might be the quickest to understand recursion, and especially understand its difference from iteration. So we had the I am a variable amount of varies, hungry, example. How do we generate one of those? Well, we could say, well, you start with the word I and then am and end with the word hungry. But between am and hungry, you put another word, vary, as many times as you want. You just repeat it as many times as you want, 1 time, 0 times, 20 times, as many times as you want. That would be iteration, where you can repeat a step, or repeat a segment a variable number of times. Iteration is close, but it's not exactly what recursion is. Let's do a different example, and I'm going to say a sentence in 2 ways. One way sounds iterative, and another way sounds recursive. The sentence is, you see yourself looking at yourself, let's say you have two mirrors parallel. So there's my head, and then there's my head in the mirror, my head again, again, and you have this infinite series. So I see myself, looking at myself, looking at myself, looking at myself, looking at myself. Really, I'm trying to find if I have a mirror here to actually do it. But you see yourself looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself a lot of times. Now I'm going to say that two ways. First, the iterative way. You see yourself. Now we have the repeated section. Repeat, looking at yourself. As many times as you want. You see yourself looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself. And we just sort of repeat looking at yourself, one segment, as many times as we want. That's iteration. Now, let's do recursion. You see something. Or something number one. What's that something? Yourself looking at something. What's something number two? Yourself looking at something. What's something number three? Yourself looking at something. And every something is a yourself looking at something. And so in each of the something slots, you have another whole clause jammed up into there. And in that one, you unpack it, and it's another box within a box, within a box, within a box, within a box. Iteration is just you have a long line of boxes next to each other. Whereas recursion is a box with a box in it, another box, inside a box, inside a box. And all the boxes are stuffed inside each other rather than just in a line next to each other. So that's the difference between recursion and iteration. And recursion is the fundamental rule of human language. Like, really, binarily branching recursion is how human syntax works. The professionals are still hashing out the details. Chomsky himself is still alive, still talking, but he's retired from that. We're still working on a lot of the details, but basically, human language, real language, tends to branch binarily, always a two branch, almost always, not 3, 4, or 5. But at each branch end, you have a box, and it can have other boxes in it. Animal languages don't really do that. You get maybe 1 or 2 boxes, and you have to have a single word in those boxes. You can't stuff a whole sentence in a box, it has to be just a word. Those are non-recursive languages, well, if in the programming language sense, and those non-recursive call system animal languages, you can't do much with them. Look, you could probably do enough to survive even as a social animal. Like, ants and bees are doing okay. You see herds of horses and cattle, they're communicating a bit and surviving. But they're not really doing podcasts. To have critical thinking and all the stuff we're doing in philosophy and science, you really need a recursive language, where in each of the slots in the tree of grammar, you can have boxes within boxes. Okay, well, now you understand human language. Go take a course in Chomskyan syntax. Like, really, if you tried it, you'd be a bit ahead. that kind of thing, if it didn't sink in now, honestly, it took me like 6 months of teachers trying to explain it to me for it to sink in and me to finally get it. Just trying to draw the trees, and it takes a while, but it's important, it's cool, and it's important. But now you understand language. Good, now we can start doing stuff with language. Maybe do some critical thinking. Or at least outline the components of critical thinking. That's what we'll start doing next. Okay, see you guys.